Hello and welcome to another episode of the AIGA Design Podcast. My name is Lishan Huang, Co-Executive Director of Learning and Programs here at AIGA, the Professional Association for Design. This season of the podcast, we are exploring the theme of design and performance. And now for my co-host.
Hello, everyone. I'm Julia Donatello. I am the Events and Competition Manager at AIGA.
And our guest for this episode is Maria Fernanda Rotta.
Hi, Lishan. Hi, Julia. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Maria. I am the co-founder and head of strategy at Switch Strategy. I'm super excited to be here talking to you and to the IAGI community.
Awesome. So Maria, to kick things off with this episode, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and your career journey so far?
Of course. So I'm currently the head of strategy at Switch Strategy. We are an organization that delivers growth for purpose-driven companies. And really what we do is we specialize in developing niche markets for organizations so we can find opportunities for growth using inclusion as an engine for innovation. So it's a really interesting role that we play for organizations, both understanding how to really grow their business models while creating access and really serving communities that are usually underrepresented in the market. I like to think of myself as a multidisciplinary strategist. I guess that is true to a lot of people that work in the design field. I've had many, let's say, roles and ways to explore design in my career. I started working in advertising back in Colombia, and then I decided to come here into the US, do an MBA in design strategy, where I could really extend the reach of the design, different verticals that I worked on, and move into the world of business strategy. This is what I've been doing since. I spent 7 years in San Francisco working in the startup world. And then in the past 3 years, I came to New York to really build my company, keep working in digital transformation, and teach at Parsons.
Wonderful. Yeah, we'd love to follow up on some of those points, including your teaching at Parsons, your design MBA. But just the first follow-up question is about your bachelor's degree. So you studied communication and product design. So what motivated you to get into design and communication in the first place?
Well, I have to start this conversation by stating that I was not gonna study design as let's say the first thing that happened after I came from school. I spent 2 years in law school before I realized that I wanted to move into design. And this is really tied back to me really being a very, let's say, creative and exploratory person. But I think that when I went into the undergrad, I was a little bit scared about fully committing into a creative career. But as the years passed, I realized that I was feeling incomplete and there was something that was missing. And I chose to change my career. So I went to study product and communication design at Universidad de los Andes in Bogota. And this was such an interesting way to approach my profession because this was one of the first schools that really thought about design as design strategy, as an integrated set of skills that could allow people not only to deliver design work, but to solve complex problems, to really think about system level problematics and challenges. And that was really appealing to me. That really allowed me to use both my creative brain for the sake of finding new solutions, but also build them within the context of organizations, build them within the context of business. And that has something that has been the underlining narrative of my career.
Wonderful.
That's great. You went to a design MBA. Why did you choose that path? And what do you think is different, the program you had comparing to a traditional MBA?
So traditional MBAs, they're really comprehensive and they offer you, let's say, a view into the different levels of an organization so you can understand how to drive, execute, and then manage business, right? Design MBAs, like the MBA in Design Strategy I did at California College of the Arts, integrate this type of learnings, but they really allow you to go into creative problem solving, for the most part using human-centered design and design thinking as core methodologies to embrace every single problem. So for people that may not have full context on this, What this means is that you tackle a problem both from a business perspective, but you put a high focus on the user, on the people that are going to be the recipients of whatever design solution you're thinking of, and you integrate their needs, their habits. You put them first when it comes to making decisions for the thing that you will building at the end. Um, it also really has a very, let's say, again, exploratory type of view on how you solve for business problems by understanding a multitude of solutions that could be brought to the table and then creating specific tests so you can prototype solutions before you take them into market. So when you combine these two things and when you really allow the, let's say, business level thinking to inform these design decisions, what you end up having is a series of approaches on how something can be solved, but also a really good understanding of how they are going to serve the people on the other side. If you do this properly, what this does for organizations is it helps them build the right solution for the right people with the right type of investments. And I think that that's a core difference between traditional MBAs and design MBAs, right? The fact that you can understand how to drive innovation, the fact that you can really like self-guide some solutions, not through what the business metrics are telling you, but on your understanding of what the customer is needing, what the market is needing. I really like this because it allows me to operate on both sides with a lot of empathy for the people that I'm solving for, building for. Um, I would say like those are the largest things in addition to design collaboration and creative collaboration, which is a big, big part of the design MBA, right? How to drive people through these creative practices.
It sounds awesome to be able to explore a more like structured MBA, but bringing this creative lenses and very exploratory and based on research. Sounds very, very interesting. So later on, I know you've become a professor at Parsons. So first is how did you become an educator in this field, and what part of the teaching role you appreciate the most?
Well, I consider myself very fortunate on being in the position to now teach and mentor younger people that are part of this career through my work at Parsons. Um, I had a feeling that I wanted to teach way back in my career when I was starting. I hadn't really found my specific voice for that purpose. As the years came through and as I learned from the way that we are appreciated within organizations, the type of contribution that we can have, this has really led me into wanting to empower the people of a younger generation so they can have the tools to really drive design as a structural function within organizations. Because I'm a big believer on the fact that we bring a different perspective to business making, organizational design, the ability to really create business models that are out of the norm. And the more and more we create that empowerment and we help students of a younger generation develop that voice, I believe that's going to be great for the people within our field because we will keep on earning that place at the table. We will keep on showing how the type of work that we do really influences better business practices. But on the other side, I think it's a gigantic gain for organizations themselves to have someone that can really marry these three types of thinking, right? Like user thinking, business thinking, system and culture level thinking, to be able to run the organizations and to engage with people. That is really the core of my work as a professor, aside from the, let's say, the type of lecture that I give. I think that is what has driven me to keep on pursuing, like growing the people within our field and giving them a hint of what's possible before they graduate so they can dream bigger and they can choose to pursue careers beyond, let's say, design creation and design delivery.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. And I think for you as a professional, also being able to customize and tailor the language of the knowledge you've gathered to a diverse audience. So in this case, your students also, I bet a very good learning path for sure.
That is very true. It's curious that you mentioned language because being an international professor and having to think into languages is a lot of what I do. Um, Sometimes that's imperfect, right? Sometimes that comes with being a second language of things. But I think that
Mhm.
also has allowed me to connect better with them, because when we move out of traditional frameworks, when we move out of traditional terminology and put things in a way that people can understand them, can relate to them, can make them to their own, I feel like that is highly effective for them to then take that, interiorize it, and turn it into the thing that they want to do or the way that they want to use it for their careers. Um, so I think that the more that we can do that for the people that are underneath us, the more we're going to uplift our career, our profession, and our contribution.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. You also had mentioned that one of the first questions you ask your students when the semester starts is what is strategic design for them? So I'm curious to hear what is it usually the answers that they give you, and also if you can share what's your perspective on the terminology and the language you usually use.
So it's kind of like a trick question, because as someone who has been in this field for almost 15 years, I realize that one of the hardest parts of the job is explaining exactly what we do. This because the design strategy current of design itself, it's fairly new, right? It's been around for about 20 plus years. It really got consolidated when design thinking it came into the mainstream. It started to become a part of what a lot of companies did in-house, but we're still pretty early in comparison to some more traditional careers that have been fully established within the market. Um, and when people think about design, they usually go to design craft, right? So they usually think about graphic design, fashion, furniture design. I think that all of us that are creatives have someone in our family that still is taking their time to understand exactly what is the thing that we do without referring to this, let's say, original subject. Um, my students go through a bit of a similar process, but for the most part, they always understand that strategic design is design methodologies applied for solving business problems. I think that that really becomes clear in the sense that you have a larger spectrum of application of the type of thinking and the processes that you take. But what we do when we work in our classes is really build on that understanding, understand how we can drive insight and value at different levels of what a problem could be. And again, I always like to think about the triad of the user, the business, and then the ecosystem that surrounds these two areas. And through very different types of thinking, very different types of skill sets, understand what's going to be let's say, the right thing to do for those three ends. If you get to marry those three things, if you get to provide a recommendation that's going to balance out what's going to work with your user on the other side, but something that's really going to perform really properly or that's going to influence culture, uh, my take is that that is what we do best, right? We allow organizations to have a bit of a panoptic view of what the solution is going to be on the other side, how the brand is going to be acting on the other side, how the product should be performing on the other side. But each person can really choose on how to apply this, because we happen to be one of the careers where, for the most part, there's not a job role or a job description that completely aligns to the things that we do. People choose to go into research, people choose to go into product. There's multiple ways on how you can apply this. So I work with my students to get a full understanding of what's possible, but then really work individually with them to understand where is it that they want to apply their creative uh, input towards a thing that they're really passionate about.
Yeah, it sounds great. You mentioned you just founded your company Switch not long ago. So I'm curious to learn more about your journey so far and what are exciting things you are exploring this new company.
So Switch was really born out of a couple of things. The first one is really this, let's say, like, interdisciplinary, multicultural journey that I've had, and that has given me a good angle to understand how to problem solve for larger organizations, how to problem solve for the, let's say, the for-profit market, and being able to match different levels of thinking for the sake of creating business opportunity to create betterment for people. I've always wanted to create strategy and innovation organization that can work to really build access for people that are for the most part, underserved. But in a very strong way, this has also been like the baby of my personal journey because I happen to be fortunate enough to belong to an interabled family. That really means that my husband has a disability, he uses a wheelchair, and we get to experience life in a very different way that the rest of the world. I think that going through this experience was the thing that drove that switch for me, because once I started to understand the world through this perspective, it was almost as if a veil had been lifted and I could see something that was in front of me, but that wasn't really there before. So living life through the lens of disability allows me to see both the gigantic opportunities that we have in today's society to really better serve and better cater to diverse populations that are not represented in a lot of the, let's say, the products and services that I see out there. But very closely also because I see the pain points of living in an environment that's not designed for yourself. And I think that is a maxim that can be applied to almost any society around the world. So what we do at Switch is we focus on these niche populations because we understand the gigantic potential of working with them. We help organizations really find, understand, and design for these niche communities. Yes, because we want to drive inclusion to what we do, but also because we understand that this is immense business value. That organizations have the opportunity to really conquer these hyper segmented communities, and create better services and better products that drive meaningful change for these types of communities. And those are the origins of why I chose to start this company, and I chose to do it today, especially in the type of environment that we're living politically, where representation is going to be more important than ever. Going back to the journey, I would say that it's definitely a roller coaster. It goes with highs and lows of inspiration and frustration, and let's say excitement and doubt. I guess that's true for everyone who's ever started a company, anyone who's wanted to create a new product. It's very exciting, but the thing that you struggle with the most is your own self and your own understanding that what you're doing is the right thing without anyone on the other side telling you to take the next step. So building business, starting a company, it's first a very personal exercise to really convince yourself that you're the right people to do this. And that's when I go back when in times of doubt, that's when I go back into the why behind my company, the reason why I think it's important for this company to exist today, and to connect to other organizations that really want to include purpose within the type of work that they do.
Yeah, following up on that, you've talked about your why behind starting Switch and your own family situation. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you see this as like a market opportunity? And then also, what are some of the challenges that you think you'll face while you're building out your business?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that the market opportunity is there for the taking. That really means that we have moved from a very, let's say, highly segmented space on how we thought about consumers, but very standardized on a single type of view. So before this, you would think as consumers as moms over 40, or you would think as people as Gen Zers between 15 and 25. So those are very standard definitions on how to think about users. They're not wrong, but they don't necessarily allow for differentiation on how you execute and create services for people. And reality is that when you design for the average, likely you're not designing specifically for anyone within that average. The average is it's a, let's say it's a data figure, but it doesn't really speak about the people that are on the other side. More and more today, especially with the influence of social media, with the influence of public conversations constantly happening around us, what we see is that communities are hyper segmented and they are influenced by different levels of identities that make up the understanding of who people are. That's where we want to reach, right? Because we believe that there is high opportunity for differentiation, for creating better unique services for people, and that's exactly the type of visibility that we want to create for these underserved communities. Just to give you an example of how this has happened in the past. So in the past 10 years, we've seen a gigantic decrease on unbanked population across the globe. What this really means is that before, the banking sector would define very specifically the people that they would create financial products with. So people that had certain level of income, people that lived in certain areas of the world, people that had access to internet, to computers, and they created financial services for these people, but that left a gigantic space of a population that couldn't really access the services. Because the conversation around users has gone further into representation, inclusion, and then again, like these niche communities, larger sets of people have been able to access financial services that were designed with the unbanked point of view from gigantic institutions. In the past 10 years, the unbanked sector has been able to increase its coverage by 44%. So globally, we came from 2.5 billion people 10 years ago that didn't have bank services. Today, we're down to 1.4 billion. This is a very significant portion of the business. This represents a lot of financial value for organizations. But if you flip the equation and you see what this actually means for the people on the other side, it means that people that don't really have a stable or high income can access financial services. People that couldn't get a credit card before now can do so. People that want microloans to start their own business now have access to these types of services. So it's a two-sided equation of impact that really drives what I believe is the most important thing, which is create access for different users on different types of industries. That being said, I realize that it's a difficult moment to be talking about this. We are currently restructuring and re-understanding how we talk about inclusion, how we talk about equity, how organizations can drive this or are limited to do so because politically things are, let's say, in a time of a lot of motion. So I think that is challenging, even speaking about this and understanding what is the right terminology to be able to play this role and to be able to encourage organizations to do so. It's still being defined on what's going to be the next wave on how we address that. And I believe that is the biggest challenge right now.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
So looking ahead in a year from now, what are the main topics that you're interested in exploring that could be personally or professionally? Is there anything in your mind that you want to share with us?
Yes, absolutely. So one of the core projects that we are driving internally at Switch is to build an ROI calculator for the value of inclusion. This is a project that we are choosing to do independently because we don't want the process to be biased by like a third-party client. We need to build this calculator to be able to really advocate for inclusion as a driver of business performance. But we also know that going through this process is going to give us a lot of light on what are the levels of contribution for a company that chooses to take an inclusive initiative. So first level would be, of course, revenue, market share, but we also know that there's additional benefits in terms of brand recognition, of internal culture, of the ability for that to influence other products. So that's something that we will be spending a lot of time on doing because we believe that this is the most assertive way to be able to reprioritize inclusivity in business design as we move forward. I'm also incredibly interested in what's happening with AI and how artificial intelligence is shaping the way that we think about people and inclusivity, but also more than anything, how we are now as creatives are integrating it into our practice. I'm actually co-writing and illustrating a book on AI for the regular people. So all of us that are not necessarily technologists, all of us that don't really understand what happens behind the LLMs. It's an approach toward understanding how all of us have a choice in how we incorporate AI into what we do, and what are the possibilities for the use of AI to solving from humanity's biggest problems. I think that AI is here to stay. AI is already part of what we do and who we are, but we do have agency and power as users and as creators of the technology to channel it for the sake of the good that we want to see into the world.
I'd like to direct your attention back to the theme of the podcast this season, which is design and performance. And I'd love to get some of your thoughts on this. We think about performance in different ways. It could be like financial performance, it could be performance like on a stage by an actor or performer in that sense. And as designers, we have to perform in different ways as like, facilitators, as teachers, as strategists. We juggle multiple roles, creator, entrepreneur, storyteller, all sorts of labels, right? Which of these roles feels most natural to you, and how do you think about performance when you're doing your jobs?
So let me actually break that into two different aspects of performance.
Sure.
For me, on the personal side, I would say that I have a natural inclination of working with people. This may be because I come from Latin America, where we are social by default, and we like to build relationships before anything else. So, in the sense of myself within business, thinking myself as potentially a performer, I would say that it revolves around that. It revolves around using communication, using storytelling to bring people to the table and have everyone be able to participate within a process. And that's really what I try to bring to my work as a professor. That's what I try to bring for my clients. But we sit at the table and we figure out what is the next step, what is the thing that we want to build. And that's something that I really enjoy because it allows me to connect with people, understand who they are before we go into actual work. Um, when I think about performance for my business and for the type of work that I like to see happen around me, it's definitely a couple of things that you already mentioned, right? So on one end, I think that we have performance as usability, on the ability for a product, service, or business model to effectively do something for people. To quote on one of my favorite frameworks, to achieve the jobs to be done of why this thing was created for, to effectively do something for the user. On the other side, which is equally important, we have financial performance, and that goes back to very specific financial metrics of whether a product or service is performing well in the market,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's engaging enough to drive sales, to drive revenue, to increase loyalty. Marrying those two things and being able to understand how those two things really impact the way that a company grows, in the end, results on overall business performance for the organization. So that triad again of business, user, and system, I think that it's a really great way to think about performance as
Mm-hmm.
like a collective indicator of how something is.
Yeah. Riffing on this idea of like this triad, right, of the business side, the user side, and like the designer side. Like as designers, as I had already mentioned, we have to like juggle these different roles of being like the creative, being the facilitator, being the researcher. Is there a persona that feels the most natural to you, or maybe a group of different personas that feel like these are like the most comfortable for you to play, or are there ones that are like more of a challenge for you, but you still play those roles?
So I think that a lot of people, again, within our field, I could be possibly feeling the same way. We change hats multiple times on the things that we do, and that's for a good reason, right? We are exposed to different types of thinking, and we are empowered with a lot of design and creative frameworks where we could be the research one day, the strategist another day, the client relationship holder the next day, and then the person that goes and brings this product to the market. I enjoy that. I enjoy being able to jump from those very different types of thinking. I think that where I drive back every single time, it's again on the figure of a
Mm-hmm.
connector of ideas, a connector of people, a connector of opportunities. And that really allows me to use my design and business skill set for the sake of what the conversation is needing today. So being a connector actually drives me to design the experience of working together. And if anything, out of all of the like end-to-end capabilities that we've been talking about, I believe that that is the one that has served me best to be able to get to the thing that we need to do.
And I also am curious to learn more of your ways of working. So, there are some people that are more collaborative, some that appreciate more like working individually and then sharing their thoughts, or more structured, or, more exploratory. What is your way of working, your creative process to start a project, let's say?
So definitely exploratory. I've noticed that whenever I come into a new situation, the first thing I do is really ramp up on the knowledge of what that situation is going to require from me. So I, more than anything, so I can come in with confidence on myself, understanding that I am the right person to drive that conversation. It's curious because before I thought that that came from a place of insecurity, right? I thought that I was constantly checking my sources and checking references and getting up to the latest literature on the thing that we were going to study, and that was to cover for some sort of gap in my understanding. I have realized after being all this time in business, particularly working on large digital transformation consultancies, that it's always best to come in with your homework done. So it actually triggers a set of confidence and the ability to inform the conversation in a better way. So that's really how I start all of my processes. I have to say that again, like speaking to the right people and getting a full understanding of what a situation is really important before you go into any type of process. And this is where I use my ideation and visualization type of skill set the most, because I like to go pen and paper and really map out the situation physically, so I can understand that this is actually what triggers the most connections in my brain about the thing that's happening. But also, this is a fantastic tool to be able to work with other people, right? If you're in front of a board and you're in a room with people and you can actually map out the thing that you're doing, illustrate the thing that you're thinking about, have people doodle and scratch on top of it, then by default you are integrating different thoughts and different perspectives into the conversation, and we are all understanding kind of like where we're heading with this. So after going into this exploratory mode and using physical collaboration so we can build into something, that's when I move a bit more into my more strategic and, let's say, like guided way towards exploring a specific subject. And I go back into whatever design methodologies I can use for that purpose. So it's either talking to users, it's even mapping their journeys, mapping their experiences. It's going back into landscape analysis and see what has worked before, what the competitors are doing, what the company has done so far, so we can build on top of that. So by marrying those two sides, by marrying this very exploratory and like creative type of thinking towards a problem and then matching it with the actual thing that we already know about a certain situation, then I believe that we get to different options of how we can execute. And then let's say that's where we start the executional part of the job, that it's a completely different dynamic.
That's great. And I appreciate your transparency in sharing your thoughts and how you saw yourself in the past and how you perceive your creative process today. That's brilliant. So you founded your company, and of course, as you had mentioned, you have expectations for the company to, progress, succeed, and to achieve some type of performance per se. So if you can connecting with our theme, what does high performance design mean to you? And if you can share an example of how design directly improved business that you have seen or have worked with.
That's a great question. I believe that high performance design eventually gets tied back into financial performance, and actually and this is not a small feat. So for anyone that has worked in product, you know that even getting a product to the market, it's already a gigantic win and a gigantic milestone that you have hit. But after that, for the product to make sense, it's gotta perform financially. So my dream for my organization within a year is that we will have clients in different sectors where we would have tested our own model of inclusion as an engine for innovation and really help them develop new business models where they can drive access while really growing their business. That's of course like the main dream for my organization, and I look to be very much embedded with education as well. I want to really be able to match those two sides of the work that I do and be able to use this for the sake of increasing access to education. One of the areas where I have seen this before is really through Parsons and the work that Parsons has done in the past years to increase the number of students with disabilities that go through the organization. I see this very closely because my husband did the master's in strategic design and management program at Parsons as well. When he came to school, he was the only person that used a wheelchair in the whole university. But by getting very deep into the organization, starting to create again visibility for the importance of involving different perspectives, for the importance of structuring the organization as a place that could meet the needs of disabled people. They have more than doubled the amount of students that had disabilities within their program, and now Parsons itself is starting to build language at different levels, so people that are preemptive students that could go to the organization can find a home on the other side and can connect there. So that's my dream, right? That my dream is to not only do great things for clients, but to understand that we are moving the needle for a community that didn't really have access before.
That's wonderful. It's great to hear about the things where you've really move the needle and change things in an organization. I'm kind of curious about the flip side as well. Do you have an example of your best failure or some sort of unexpected outcome where things didn't happen according to plan, and what did that teach you about performance or about design?
I have to say that there's always many examples of this case where when you work in design, we say a couple of things, right? We say learning by doing, and when you learn, at a minimum, 50% of the things that you do are not going to work out on the other end. And we also very usually say, fail fast, fail cheap, so you can learn from the process itself. I've had multiple of those opportunities in my career. Before working at Switch, I spent 5 years working in technology, driving digital transformation for large organizations around the world. And a lot of the processes that we took for certain type of problem solving didn't necessarily lead us to the type of product that we needed to build. As an example, I spent a lot of time working with Anthem to develop their customer enablement platform for the Medicare and Medicaid sector. This is a difficult type of population to understand because for the Medicaid sector, we are talking about elderly people that don't necessarily have a very strong approach towards digital services. This was in the midst of the pandemic. The ability for people to connect in person or even to go to an appointment was very difficult. And on the other hand, we needed to create a technology platform that could help representatives give access to senior people to the type of services that they needed to create. But I think that at the beginning, we came into this project thinking about the original users that we were going to design for as a digital first type of population because digital adoption increased so much in the pandemic. I think that we failed to acknowledge that was going to be a different case for the people in the Medicaid sector, and that was going to require a different type of technology, a different type of user experience. Even the information design within the platform had to be different because it had to be catered and digested for people that we're going to require extended assistance into getting to their services. So it was a U-turn in the type of work that we were doing. That's when we learned again that it's always so valuable to go back and understand who are the people that you are designing for, how will they experience your service when you're not in the picture. So it was definitely one of those areas where we failed, that we were challenged in our understanding, where we had to stop and make a decision on whether we were actually building the right thing or we had to go back into the drawing board and make this service better for end users that are not necessarily completely used to driving their healthcare in a digital format. That was an interesting and very informative type of experience.
That sounds, very challenging indeed, specifically in that in the middle of the pandemic, right?
When it's more needed, because then we realized that the urgency was even higher because a lot of people were going through, they had multiple healthcare needs that were very pressing or were not necessarily tended to because we were cut off from physical services. So yes, we had to take time to understand who these people were on the other side, but we also needed to act fast. so we could provide a service that was effective quickly, and it can help them really like get a better sense of healthcare services in a time of more needed.
Very interesting. So as we start to wrap up, we always like to understand if you could design your perfect creative day for maximum performance, how would this day look like? How would you design it? What are the choices behind it for you?
Well, one of the things that I have realized is that I need to maintain a balance between my personal priorities and my work priorities for me to operate at my highest performance. There was a time before starting this company where I used to wake up at 5:30 in the morning because I was working with a team in India, and I would connect because we would have very few hours in the day, talk to them for a couple of hours, and then I would work straight throughout the day until I connected back with them at 9 p.m. where they woke up, and I would create a cycle of running my days like this
Wow.
every day. This didn't really work for me. I did it for a while, and I felt the burnout happening very quickly as I was going through this. So I don't believe that 24/7 productivity equates to performance. So now the thing that I have done is I have created healthier routines where I can take care of myself for me to be able to take care of my company, to take care of my team. I like to start my days doing physical exercise. I do yoga, I do cycling. I take the first hour of the morning to really concentrate on my mental health, on my body. Then I go back and start working on productivity mode, and I start my day with a very, very large black coffee. And then I try to segment my day, taking the most important or most challenging thing that I have to take care of earlier in the day, so I don't burn out myself with smaller tasks, leaving it towards the end. What I have found is if I complete the most important thing first, I feel both a sense of release and a sense of accomplishment on having been able to do that, and then all of the rest of my day flows very well. Um, I I'm super physical when it comes to the things that I do, so I have like to-do lists of everything that I want to do in the day, and I try to like keep it short because I heard from someone that you should set yourself to do 3 things a day, and that's achievable, and that's, let's say, like a smart goal that you can achieve. So I try to like limit it to 3, and then I keep on adding things if I get more bandwidth. But I try to do this hacks, and I appreciate everyone on like social media that's sharing their little hacks because I believe they work. I try to create that balance throughout the day in between. Okay, a lot of things that I've accomplished, and then I take 30 minutes to like have a decent lunch, go for a walk with my dog, and try to incorporate both of the things throughout my day.
Wonderful. That's great to hear about that. And thank you for sharing your notebook. That's really great. Uh, I'm curious now about like your inspiration. Where do you go to find this inspiration? How do you continuously innovate and expose yourself to new things and ideas?
So I think that I find inspiration in people and the great work that other people are doing. I'm fortunate enough to live in New York, where there is a multitude of people pursuing very, very interesting dreams here. And I try to bake time within my week so I can go and meet new people in the city and learn from what they're doing. New Yorkers have a bad rep. I would say that I don't feel it. I have reached out to people that I barely know, and everyone has given me 30 minutes to have a cup of coffee, and then get to meet each other. And I find that super inspirational. I have to say that I try to get out of my traditional topics for inspiration. I try to go and look for very different things. So I try to go to museums. I try to connect with people that are doing something completely different and unrelated to what I'm doing. And that really gives me, it like energizes me. And I always come back home with something that I learned about the other person and something that I learned about myself in that process.
That's wonderful. Do you have any specific recommendations, whether it's like a museum exhibition, a book, a movie, a show, any piece of media or experience that you would like to recommend to our viewers slash listeners?
I always recommend the same book to my students at Parsons. It's called Feel Like an Artist by Austin Kleon. This is a book that is super close to my heart. I actually got it here when I came to New York for the first time after graduating for my undergrad program, and it was one of the first things that I found here. And it was so liberating because rather than telling you exactly what you had to do, it's almost like the book gave you permission for the process of getting inspiration from other people,
Hmm.
trying things and failing. It lowered the pressure on my own perception as a creative.
Hmm.
And I think it's important that that's important for everyone to have. Like we can find ways to increase our education in multiple formats, but I think that this book was more about creativity and your relationship to yourself, which I've gained a lot from as the years have gone through.
Wonderful. Yeah, we'll definitely post a link to that so people can check it out in the show notes and in the description for this episode. So, wow, we're starting to wrap up on our time together, Maria. It's really flown by, but we'd like to end our episodes with a call to action. So, can you let our listeners, our viewers know where they can learn more about you, where they can learn more about your work, connect with you, whatever? We'll post this in the show notes as well, but it's helpful for folks to hear it or see it as well.
Of course, I would love to connect to the IAGA community. I've been both a member and a fan for the past decade. So people can reach out to me on my LinkedIn. It's Maria La Rota. We will drop it on the notes. But also, I'd love to invite everyone to check out the work that we're doing at Switch. Our website is switchstrategy.co. We are looking to connect with people that are working within the same space. And actually, we are offering a 30-minute discovery call for organizations that want to identify how they can include more of a purpose within the work that they're doing or find a way to innovate their business model to drive inclusivity and to grow.
Wonderful. All right. Well, Maria, thanks again for joining us. And thank you for listening to or watching this episode of the AIGA Design Podcast. We are wherever you get your podcasts or also on YouTube at AIGA Design if you'd like to look for us there. And remember, this episode and all of our episodes, all of our programming is sponsored by AIGA members. So learn more about AIGA at aiga.org and hope to see you too at our conference this year, October 9th through 11th in Los Angeles, California. But until then, I'll see you in a future episode. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.